Hello. You look lovely. Hey, Carter. You're muted.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good.
Hello.
So do we want to do the presentation, then we can elevate all the board members in after the fact who aren't on the committee, or do you want them to join?
Since we'll be sharing screen, it actually doesn't make a difference.
Sounds good. I'll,
Dr. Shirley has, where did she go? Oh, hi, Dr. Shirley. We're just waiting for people to sign in or sign on. There's a lot of conflicting Zoom meetings tonight. There's a memorial for Tom. Hey, Sandy.
Hi, Sandy.
There's 11 people. Lois has her hand raised.
Mistake, I'm sorry. I was just testing it out. Thank you.
It works.
Thanks, Mar.
How do you raise your hand?
You see on the bottom of your screen participants? There's a on your screen participants.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
If you click that, you'll see a raise your hand feature. If you click it with your mouse.
I just see members of the.
And then.
it's down on the bottom, Sandy.
Oh, I see it. Okay, thanks. Got it. Got it.
Great. All right.
All right.
We have a few members, working group members that are going to be arriving later to the meeting because they have other Zoom commitments. So do you want to give it one more minute before we start? That's a cool picture of Bob in his mask doing his part. All
right.
Should we get started?
Yeah, let's get started.
Okay, and I should rename myself. You want to share your screen?
Yeah. Right now.
Welcome, everyone.
Dr. Shirley has her hand raised. I don't know if that.
Oh, Dr. Shirley, you had a question? Oh.
Can you guys see my whole screen? I mean, just the slide?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see it.
All right.
Okay, welcome everyone to the Equity Working Group. My name is Patricia Laria. I'm one of the co-chairs. Mar?
Hi, I'm Mar Fitzgerald. I am the other co-chair. Thank you all for being with us this evening.
Okay, so we're gonna get started because we have a kind of a busy agenda presenting the processes of our committees and Community Board 2. And I would just like to go over the meeting protocol. Please be respectful to the person speaking. If you have a different view, ask a question or raise your hand. Please do not type derogatory comments in Q&A. Responsibility, take responsibility for and accept the consequences of your words. Please remember that every EWG meeting is open to and attended by the public and is video and audio recorded. Do not assume other people's identities. Be respectful of others' identities and pronouns. Attendees will be on mute until Q&A. Use Q&A or raise hands to ask questions. Due to time constraints, we may not be able to answer all questions. Please abide by Q&A. And when we do ask attendees for Q&A, we are gonna limit them to 1 to 2 minutes, depending on what time we have left. Next slide. And the agenda for this evening is a presentation of CB2 Committee Processes and Protocols. The purpose, participants, laws, and city policies that inform the work of each of our committees, and discussion of CB2 processes through an equity lens. And I also want to say that community board members consist of 50 people appointed by the borough president and district council members from different geographic sections and neighborhoods within CB2. And the membership on the board shall be diverse to meet its interests. Mar?
I would add to that most of our committees meet monthly, and we meet as a full board, all committees, also monthly. And let's get started. The first committee we'll look at this evening is our Land Use and Housing Committee. This committee's purpose is to review land use applications at a public hearing and make recommendations to the governing city agencies on location and purpose use as presented. Some of the proposals that are presented are special permits, disposition, acquisition, development of property, zoning modifications, changes, and requests for variances, housing issues, including affordable housing, live-work quarters for artists, and mandatory inclusionary housing. The agencies that deal with this are the Board of Standards and Appeals, Department of City Planning, Uniform Land Use ULURP, also known as ULURP, Joint Live-Work Quarters for Artists, New York City Loft Board, Department of Housing and Community Renewal, block associations, property owners, business improvement districts, and privately owned public space. Applications typically come to this committee after submission to BSA, the Board of Standards and Appeals, and the Department of City Planning, DCP. Topics of interest to the community are sometimes introduced, presented, and discussed, especially if more information is needed about a particular application, subject, or topic. So far, we see a great opportunity for this committee to incorporate a dialogue for equity into their processes by working to identify potential sites for affordable housing and expand opportunities for affordable housing, which we know is affordable housing being a tremendous part of any conversation about equity and diversity.
Our next committee that we'll be discussing is Schools and Education. And the purpose of this is to focus on and advocate for the education-related needs of our community, including funding, design, new public schools, existing schools, and educational policy issues in our community. This committee primarily is an advocacy committee with little to no external regulatory approvals driving the agenda. Topics are generated from external events, partnerships with other committees, CBs, and specific topics. The groups or agencies that come before this committee are DOE, elected officials, local schools, admin, PTA, SLA, education advocates, and other individuals and organizations. I'd like to highlight some of the resolutions that have been passed on this committee. Open streets, parks, spaces for school, which is a hot topic in the news lately because school is having a rough start to the fall semester. 75 more in socioeconomic diversity in admissions, diversity at specialized high schools, funding for free and after school programs, reducing the student-teacher racial representation gap in New York City public schools, students with dyslexia, print-based learning differences, COVID-19 student accommodations to allay the increased inequities in access, and reinstating the summer youth employment program, reducing the digital divide and actions to reduce systemic, all right. I'm sorry. Your thing is blocking it. All right. And the opportunity that we see with this equity lens is to revisit the anti-racism resolution that was passed over the summer. Refine next best steps with education leaders, make it a priority for 2021 candidates, revisit our teacher workforce development resolution, focus on teacher recruitment while identifying barriers and recommendations, convene local conversations about screening, D1, D2 segregation, and other educational sorting tools that prevent our most disadvantaged students from accessing educational sources and opportunities in our community.
And I'd like to add to this that we asked every committee 2 or 3 diversity questions about how they are currently and how they feel they could better serve the needs of our diverse community. And Janine, who is the chair of schools and ed, really, these were not opportunities we came up with. These were things she was already doing and has pledged to take further and to continue. So we can't take credit for these recommendations on equity recommendations.
The next committee that we'll be discussing is landmarks and public aesthetics. And the purpose of this committee is to review landmark preservation commission applications that come before Community Board 2 on exterior works on buildings. The proposals such as exterior works on buildings, new public plans, designations of new districts, individual landmarks, and the agency that provides these applications is the Landmark Preservation Commission. And from the chair, I believe, who's joining us tonight, Chanel Spence, he says, respect for our landmark district architecture implies respect for its uniquely diverse history and guards against the erasure of the history and its loss to the momentary appetites of gentrification.
Which is a lovely sentiment.
Yes.
We thought, and that's why we added it. So thank you, Chanel, for that.
And the opportunity that our recommendation was to have further dialogue, conversation about how landmarks are incorporated into our community with a focus on cultural representation, and discussion of plaques and other opportunities to tell stories of our marginalized residents and the evolution of our community.
And the next committee we will take a look at is the Quality of Life Committee. The Quality of Life Committee's purpose is to hear applications for sidewalk cafes, street activities, festivals, stoops and sidewalk alterations, and newsstands. It also deals with environmental and resiliency issues. The committee also hears general quality of life concerns from the community. It hears proposals for really any kind of street activity, including block parties, cleanups, health fairs, farmers markets, mobile units, plaza events, press conferences, production events, rallies and demonstrations, religious events, single block festivals, street events, and street festivals. So this is really everything that's going on in our streets every day. Very important committee. The associated agencies, groups, organizations, laws, and standards that it deals with are the Department of Consumer Affairs, Street Activity Permit Office, Department of Sanitation, the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment, and Department of Transportation. The opportunity we see here, and by the way, we're also going to discuss this, and we want lots more suggestions for opportunities from the committee. Support events that encourage cultural literacy and diversity. Recommend that applicants include programming that honors the history and culture of our unique neighborhoods. And I might add to that, to all the people of our unique neighborhoods historically. And that was our last slide. And at this point,
Overall, we have 10 committees, and this was part 1. And we'll have a follow-up, I believe, next month. So I see, we'll take some questions now, and I see Chenault has his hand raised. Chenault, you can unmute. You're still muted, Chenault.
And I love to talk. I have thought of one more thing since we sent that in. It came up when I was reading some applications. There is almost always some history of the immediate neighborhood or the building under consideration, whatever that might be. We don't normally dwell on that because we're so both aesthetically, but it occurred to me that we could incorporate in the whereas clauses a little bit about the building itself and the neighborhood. I had written in the details about Gay Street, for example. We not infrequently have something there, and that has such a rich history of the progress of African Americans in the community, from a servant class there to a sort of bohemian artistic group. And just in general, that we would keep.
did we lose him?
Over.
Oh, there we go. There you are. Pause for a second.
Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, I'd like to thank all of the chairs that took the time to fill out our survey. Thank you so much for doing that. We really feel like we have such a better understanding of what it is you guys, and respect for what you guys do.
May I add? It was also a chance for me to think about in an orderly way what we do. We just do it, and likewise in just reading through what you've had here, it gives the kind of picture you don't always get of other committees. And then when we meet as a board, we're really concerned with that. So I think it's been valuable from including us and other committees as a matter of inclusion.
Oh, that's great. Wonderful. Do you want to call on people, Patricia?
Sure. I see that Frederica has her hand raised.
Yeah, hi. I agree with Chenault. I thought it was a great exercise, but I'd just like you to reprise the title of the last slide on each committee. What was it? Was it called recommendations or?
Opportunity.
Opportunities. Can you tell me the derivation of that opportunity?
Well, we tried to figure out, it's an opportunity for equity. And this was just—
For what?
Can you hear me? For equity. To
Equity.
look at what you do through an equity lens. And we didn't want to call it recommendations. We didn't want to call it suggestions. We just wanted to say, here we see an opportunity to maybe expand on what you're already doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what that—
I feel like I filled that form out very recently. When was your last committee meeting?
a month ago.
So you didn't have my form filled out by then. So like, who is it that's suggesting the opportunities?
Well, so Patricia and I looked at what you guys sent, and we came up with just some opportunities to get the ball rolling. But the suggestions that we plan to make to you guys are going to be discussed and decided by the entire committee and attendees of this meeting. So these were just ideas that we have and things that we thought we saw possibly, but again, they will be discussed. And I hope that you will participate in that discussion.
I'd be very happy to, but I guess I would have thought you would do it in the opposite order, but okay. Always interested in good suggestions.
Just to get the ball rolling. I see Susan Wittenberg.
Hi, I'm unmuted, right?
Yes.
This, following up on Frederica's comments, this is a much too long a discussion, obviously, for tonight's meeting, but affordable housing is one of the biggest issues we've dealt with on the community board. And way back when David was chair, Katie Bordenauer and I headed an affordable housing working group. And we tried to, our purpose was not just to help the community board maybe have a point of view on it, but we realized then that people didn't even have the language to discuss it. You know, that they didn't know what AMI meant. We couldn't, how could we have a point of view until if we didn't give everybody a vocabulary, a shared vocabulary to express their ideas. And so we were doing a lot of meeting with people and having experts come in. And then when de Blasio was elected, because the supposed cornerstone, one of his mayoralty was supposed to be creating a few 100,000 units, our work seemed to make most sense to pause because the city was now going to have a path forward and we would embrace the city's plan, even though, as we know, that didn't really work out. But just historically, you know, we've been extremely active as a community in trying to find ways to have more affordable housing. We lost, it was a terrible blow when Hudson Square was built. That was a major, the biggest opportunity we could have had to have mandatory inclusionary housing, mandatory affordable housing. It didn't happen, so we got almost none. And now the most important battle we really are facing is preserving the affordable housing that exists in our neighborhood, so that it's not exactly a diversity. How do we then change that? But part of what I'm trying to say is that we've struggled so hard without success to maintain a balance in our community and not have it become as wealthy and so much luxury housing and market rate housing. And so the timeliness of this committee combined with the urgency in the discussions about affordable housing, and even just the past week, you know, at DID, you know, we've been dealing with things about what upzoning means, and Scott Stringer suddenly saying, you know, we're going to do upzoning. So I'm saying to you, this is something that the discussion, you know, we could have our own whole separate evening to talk about these issues, you know, going forward this year for us. So I agree, you know, it's the beginning and it's a real, you know, great beginning. But I just wanted to share some more history about that.
Thank you so much. Yes, no, our you know, the opportunities we see are certainly not to say this is not work that is already being done, has been being done, and really to just celebrate that work. Especially, you know, we know what you guys have been doing as far as affordable housing, and we want to support that and you know, continue that work with you.
And have more success.
Yeah, well,
not just trying, more success.
Yeah, so that's what that is. Thank you so much, Suzanne.
Sandy? Unmute yourself, Sandy.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Just picking up on what Susan said, I think it goes much, much deeper than that. And our struggles for a particular housing project or even a particular building that maybe could include some senior housing or affordable housing. We're always waging those battles. It seems we always lose or get just some little, the crumbs that the developer somehow manages to sweep our way without it really affecting their pocketbook. I think the problem is that the city and the state now rely on private funding for public housing. And I think that's a disaster. And I think the city has to now own its own responsibility to create affordable housing, to maintain affordable housing. What goes on in NYCHA is a disgrace. And now they're selling off portions of NYCHA property for big developers, and somehow that's gonna be great for the people in NYCHA. I think it's awful. But I think that whole structure, which is huge, I mean, the developers in New York City, you know, run the joint. And pick the candidates, and their funding is limitless. But I think that's really the discussion we have to have. When I joined the board, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, I remember them fighting about the St. John's building. And, oh yeah, we're going to get this many senior housing. And we had a bargain and negotiate. And weren't we lucky? It was better bargaining with them than not coming to the table at all, because then we get nothing. And as it turned out, after all those shenanigans, they sold the property to another entity who's not providing anything. So it becomes this joke almost, like what we spend this enormous amount of energy as a board and, as a community, fighting for this stuff that we shouldn't have to fight the city, the developer for. It's the city that has to start taking responsibility, and the state, for creating and maintaining affordable housing, and not just at piddling levels, like even the thing that was the buildings that were being developed next to me. And the developer, in order to try and build higher and bigger, said that he would provide 11 apartments for lesbian and gay folks. And it was like an insult. And everyone was, well, maybe we should take it. Maybe, that's reasonable. There were other reasons why the developer failed in that particular attempt. But it's just astounding how much energy we put into something that's a losing proposition. And that not only a losing proposition, but is a wrong, an incorrect, a wrong public statement. Okay, we'll work with private developers to create schools, create libraries, create housing, create parks. So you have Barry Dilla's dreamland that he's going to then turn into a private venue arena on certain occasions. And then on other occasions, he'll let the public in for nothing. And that's public land that he's decided he'll make a development, so the decisions, the choices, the aesthetic choices, the cultural choices, the economic choices are never in the community's hands.
Yes, I agree with you on so much of that, Sandy. But I can't, subscribe to the idea that this work is a losing battle. I think all of us are here because we believe that we can make a difference and can make a change. And so, as this lowest form of municipal city government we are, it starts with us. And so it is up to us to figure out solutions that work for our communities and the city at large. So we have to, keep hope alive, as Jesse might say.
And we need more discussions. I mean, you kind of hit it nail on the head there, Sandy, when you said that we need to have more discussion so that the city hears what the public and community want. So we need to have more of these hearings. That's my 2 cents. Dan?
First of all, thank you so much for leading this group, Laura and Patricia. It's been great and educational even for me, who's been on the board for a while, so thanks. I want to let you know, I just think that addressing equity through the community committees is a really great idea. I think it's really smart because you're defining what we actually speak to the government every month, and it's just a great way to get the message out, and it's integrated with what already is working. So it's really smart. I do think that there's an opportunity. I've been chairing a Hudson River Park Advisory Council. It's not in your survey. I think there are opportunities there as well. So if you could open it up to the Hudson River Park Advisory Council as a committee, which represents the entire Hudson River Park. It has educational programs. It has recreational programs. It's an estuary, and it employs many, many, many people.
Fantastic. We will. That's great. And off the top of your head, what opportunities being, involved and immersed in that committee do you see for equity? Where do you think what do you guys think? What do you think you guys are doing great, and what do you want to expand on?
I'll tell you, Little Island's doing great things. They sent out a survey and about brainstorming and focus grouping on what can bring a mirror image of and how we celebrate storytelling on Little Island as a reflection of our community. And I thought that was a very smart approach. There are a lot of educational programs that they also have that different community groups, including our schools, participate in. The trust itself has its own educational programs in maritime areas. There's an opportunity to integrate and make sure that everyone knows this is a public, beautiful place. And how can we keep it as not only for our community, but for citywide too. So I think there are lots of opportunities.
Can I ask who received that survey?
It was a focus group that was invitation from, I'm on the council of Little Island. So it was different artists and just, it was initial because what they're trying to do is come up with, I can put you in touch with Michael and Michael can share it with you.
Yes, I would love that. Thank you.
You bet.
We would.
Okay, Dr. Smith? Dr. Smith, you're up. Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I was saying that I've been on the board for a while and I want to just say I'm going to jump off in a minute for another Zoom, but want to talk just to commend you and Mark first for the thinking in terms of organizing such a working group. But more importantly, I think what you've shown now with the survey, I was not aware that you, because I'm not on the committee and I'm not a chair, had done the survey and asked chairs to complete it. I think it gives, and someone earlier spoke to it, I think it really gives a clear understanding, I think it was Chenault, of what all of the committees are really supposed to be doing. And I think it's very helpful for those people who are like new on the board and even some people who've been around on the board for a while that might not have a true understanding of what a certain committee does because they have not been on that committee or are not on the committee now. So I just want to before I jump off, to say kudos to you. And I think you guys are headed in the right direction. Not so sure about the opportunity piece. I think it does have value. I think it might lend itself more to a kind of subjectivity, I think sometimes, as opposed to objectivity, but I think keeping a larger picture in mind. When we think about this community, it is probably much more diverse than people understand. Sometimes they look through the lens of religion. They look through the lens of ethnicity. So I think it has, the committee has, the working group has a potential to unearth and to move this community board in a more progressive way. So I thank you for listening, and I'm going to jump off now to be on the call for Tom. But anyway, keep up the great work, and I thank you for allowing me to join.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Smith.
you. Lois?
Here I am. Okay, one question about Little Island. Could you or Dan give more of information about that? And my comment also about with what Sandy was saying, never give, I don't know, she said it, never give up. And even though some of us who have been on the community board for a longer period of time can see things in retrospect as futile, but with newer board members who might have read the history of our community, but haven't felt it, I think that they're fresh. They're gonna, you will, including me, even though I'm one of the older people. I used to be young, but now I'm one of the older people that will be a tremendous force to make change. So my question about the Little Island, Dan or somebody, please.
Well, Little Island, I can just give you a basic. It's going to open in the spring 2021. Like any kind of theater or any kind of production, they are preparing to open. They don't know what they're going to do. They want to make a splash. So they're trying to find out from the community in a small group, because they've hired this other company to formulate different brainstorming ideas. So the idea is they don't really know. They're coming up with a concept for how best to open it. But the good news is that Little Island is an open air theater that will be able to have plays and engage with schools and be an art center right across from the Whitney, where our community will be participating as it has. So it's a very exciting thing, and it's COVID friendly.
Well,
I mean, COVID is not allowed to come.
Well, it's open
COVID
air. So it's,
non-friendly.
yeah.
well, tons of opportunity there, right?
That's right. There are many jobs associated. I was just writing you the email to introduce you to Michael
Thank you. Thank you.
in Austin, and they can give you the survey or the ideas behind it. But they're very sharing. It's all about betterment for us all. It's about equity.
Good. So we should, I would like to hear more from the
Our committee, our working group.
our working group on what they see for the committees, and actually not just from the working group, but also from the chairs present, what they see what they think their committees are doing and can do better. We did ask you in the survey, but I'd love to have it on the record and to have a discussion about what you're doing to better meet the needs of our diverse community within your committees. Anyone? Frederica? How do you?
I wouldn't answer this question without discussing it with my committee. I think it's a great question, but I think it's a little precipitous. I'd like to hear from your working group about your the opportunities that you didn't have a chance to speak with them about. I think you're raising great questions, but I would need to bring it back to the Land Use Committee and hear from them.
Okay, great.
Any other chairs or our working group members input?
No one has anything to say.
No.
I'm
You
actually,
see, I have a question. Frederica, when you said you didn't like the word opportunity, would you
I
have?
didn't say that. I didn't say I didn't like it.
Oh, okay. That's how it came across. Like you
No,
didn't
not
like the
at all.
choice of word.
I was interested in the genesis of the opportunities.
Okay. Okay. All right.
yeah, I am, I'm looking actually at Frederica's, the answers that we got from land use on the diversity questions, and I'm actually going to read them now. How does the committee meet the needs of our diverse community? And the answer was, we strive to treat all parties in an equal and professional manner and give everyone a fair hearing. Ultimately, we must come to a decision within parameters of our jurisdiction. Very often, we encourage the applicant and the affected community to work together to find common ground, and we do act as brokers when needed. We invite those who cannot attend the meetings to submit written testimony. And when asked, how can this committee's work further social justice? This committee chair would like to participate in a broader conversation about how social justice applies to land use. Here is an example. In our review of applications for residential projects that include a mix of market rate and affordable housing units, we have voted strongly in favor of affordable housing when those applications are submitted and against amenity packages that favor market rate tenants to the detriment of non-market rate tenants. In the past, we have wholeheartedly rejected the poor door concept preferential amenities such as restricted gyms and common space and unequal interior finishes, which is great. So that's something that you guys are already doing, right? Seems simple, but that's what we're asking. Is there more of an opportunity there? And maybe we should have a joint meeting, or maybe we should come to land use and discuss with you guys more, have that broader conversation. So thank you for that, Frederica.
Sure.
Matt?
So, first of all, just incredible job as always. And I really appreciate all of the effort and time that has gone into this. So thank you, both Patricia, Mar, and the chairs who responded. Sincerely appreciate it. So I definitely am not in the futile camp. I am excited about this moment. I mean, I'm young and silly and green behind the ears, don't get me wrong. But I don't think that there has ever been a better time to be involved in local politics. Like, this is where the rubber meets the road, and we have a deficit of national leadership, in certain respects, a deficit of city leadership. And I think, we can step up. Do I think that we're going to come up with a new model for housing in New York City? Probably not, but maybe. Maybe. There's no reason that we can't come up with something that works for the community. And if it's marketable, if it's going to work, it's going to work. I'm interested in looking at how we can increase, not just through, maybe this isn't, I would have to imagine it's for land use, but maybe it's not. But not just how we can vote on that which comes before us, but proactively advocate for and execute on, certainly more the former than the latter, new housing ideas. We have a lot of homeless people. We need some housing. We have a lot of people who, if they had stable housing, would be adding to the GDP in significantly larger numbers. If they didn't have to worry about where they were going to bed, where their kids were going to bed that night. This really can impact, and it can be a serious generator of growth. So that's one thing. I've said it a couple times, I think, for SLA, and I don't think we're talking about SLA yet, but, I'm interested in how we can, again, not just make sure that the applications we're looking at we're dealing with fairly, but advocate for a diverse restaurant group, a diverse ownership class, a diversity of options. And I know, so I work for a minority woman-owned business, and anytime almost all government contracts, we have to submit an EEO-1. I think we should be asking questions about how much diversity is on leadership teams when hearing applications. I think we should be asking about whether they're willing to make a commitment in terms of diversity hiring, whether they're willing to make a commitment on, MWBEs as their general contractors, their subcontractors. If we start even signaling that it's important to us, I think it can have a material impact, certainly on this small community. I'll pause there, but thank you guys again.
Everything you said, Matt, for sure. Especially, create affordable housing. If we don't uplift our marginalized community members, then they won't be able to contribute as citizens to all of us and the well-being of our entire city and our communities. And so it is so important for us to create opportunities for them to be contributing members of society. So absolutely. As far as the diversity in hiring, particularly where building is concerned. I was recently in another meeting and hearing a presentation, and those were the questions that I had. How many minority-owned, contractors, architects, designers have you taken bids from? Have you taken proposals from? You know, you're saying that you're going to provide affordable housing, but for whom and who is building it? You know, and I think we should be asking these questions. I think we should be asking these questions in all of our committees, for sure. You know, I sit on SLA, and there's not a huge diversity of applications that we get. And it also makes me wonder, why is that? Why aren't there more Black and brown applicants to SLA? You know, and you know, we've gone out and spoken to the few Black business owners in the neighborhood that we found. And, you know, some of them, the ones that don't have liquor license, are like, well, it never occurred to me that I would get one. You know, that the process would be too difficult. And then we heard from others where, you know, the process then seemed, you know, not that transparent, and they had struggles. So, you know, we need to investigate how we present information to the public and what opportunities, you know, we can expand for them, I believe. Anyone?
Well, we do have Zella Jones, an attendee.
Okay.
Let's,
do you want to bring her forward?
Yeah.
Let me.
Zella?
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted, am I?
Yes.
Okay. Forgive me if this has been brought up before, and I will exit very quickly if it has and do my homework. But we're using the word diversity in everything. And I'm hopping back a little bit to Dr. Smith's comment about there being lots of kinds of diversity within our purview in Community Board 2. And maybe what we're doing is looking to expand our purview beyond Community Board 2. Maybe we are marketing to other communities. You can say yes or no, but I would get more out of this discussion if I knew what the targets of diversity are. What do we have within our current, what diversity is present in our current area population that we need to address? That's number one. Number two, and some of that you've covered tonight, is in the operations of the community board, what opportunities come up for us to increase the diversity within our community. But throwing around just the word diversity is for me, at least, in these very important discussions, muddying in some ways and confusing in others. So the question is, have you defined the diversities that we need to address? That is with whether it's age related, whether it is country of origin related, whether it is economically related. You must have had something in mind when you did this.
Thank you so much, Stella. We will take everything that you said into consideration.
But there's no answer?
It's very clear to me that diversity is, when I talk about diversity, and when I talk about diversity in this committee, I'm talking about racial, ethnic, socioeconomic, diversity of opportunity, for a diversity of people, the different kind of people. I mean, are you asking us, you know, to define what groups we want?
I'm asking you to define what we've got for diversity and put it into some sort of category that we can then apply to in some way, or make a benchmark. I'm not trying to single out individuals, but if, for instance, the population of Community Board 2 is, and I'm taking this off the top of my head, overwhelmingly over 65, is overwhelmingly immigrant, then that's a combination that has import to a lot of the things that you've been talking about tonight within committees. So we need to be able to define it, direct this in some way. Just to say diversity is racial or diversity is ethnicity is kind of hard here. We've got a lot of ethnicities in Community Board 2. I don't know how many races we have in Community Board 2, but we should probably find out. But it would be very hard for me on a committee. For instance, let's take the SLA committee, and I totally agree with the comments that were made about the SLA committee and how wonderful it would be to have diversity in hiring and diversity in venue. And I'm really proud to bring a couple of new ethnicities into the SLA committee this month. But is diversity in hiring just racial? Is it age? Should we have more 50+ people serving alcohol? I mean, I don't know, but we need to look at, define the diversity that you're talking about. Because if it's strictly racial, we haven't got a pool of a whole lot. Maybe we should have a pool of more. Maybe we should attract more. I don't know. I'm very happy to do either. But give us a benchmark here.
You know,
Della, in our statement of purpose, when we created this working group, we said that CB2 working group commits to making racial equity a primary focus. We will implement new practices and internal operations to create an organizational culture that is viable and sustainable within a world of changing demographics and unremitting racial disparities. So that was our purpose in creating this working group. So I hear what you're saying, and we will definitely give you, I guess you need like visuals of what our community board looks like presently, but it's changing. So I'm trying to answer your
I'm glad for to change. I want it to change. Let's change it. But let's be real with what we've really got to work, what materials we've got to work with here right now. You know, if we're not the lowest, we are really at the bottom of any community district with African American population. And now it should be more. Every one of my son's friends is of color, because I'm not working within Community Board 2, and neither was his education, neither is his career. But we need to understand that.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Stella.
You're welcome.
Okay, moving on to Pete Davies. Let me allow him to talk.
Okay, I think I'm on mute.
Unmute yourself, Pete.
There we go. I just threw something up in the chat, which might be of interest, about the history of the abolitionist movement that was really centered, in fact, in the building I live in, which is a portion of it is remnant of the church. It was built in 1845, which was the center of one of the preachers of the abolitionist movement in leading up to the Civil War. I'm sure that's more complicated than the history I read, but there might be something of interest there. I want to go a little deeper though. I go to a lot of committee meetings. I go to a lot of public hearings, and the consultancy class, the lobbyist class, is something that should be looked at. I hear comments from some of these people when they're presenting projects. I find out information. We found out during a recent land use hearing that this major international fashion company had been brought up on charges for just really scurrilous things about the way they dealt with employees. biases within that company that were charged and heard, resulting in rulings. It was shocking. Recently, we had a applicant come before Community Board 2 for a landmarks meeting, one of the major banks in the United States, who was trying to get some ATMs put on the outside of the building. And when asked why, they said, well, you know, if you have the ATMs inside and people access that, the interior space turns into something of a hotel. And this was a bank that has been convicted of doing bad loans that forced people out of their houses. I mean, so there's this, and this person presented this as almost as if it were a joke. And there's really no room in the hearing to call that out. But that is the mindset that comes into the room with a lot of the established folks that push things through the city machine. I don't know how to examine that. But it's something that I see. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. One other thing about the High Line. When the High Line, so I used to volunteer at the High Line with Frederica. I was a volunteer docent. I gave tours on the High Line. When they first started, it was soon discovered that the folks in the neighborhood, in the housing at Fulton houses, they did not feel welcome at the High Line. There was a divide. And the High Line totally changed its programming, the way it dealt with the community. And so I would think, I can't remember his name now, but the guy who eventually had that job is now the head of Lower Manhattan Cultural Council.
Gonzalez.
Yes.
Gonzalo Casals.
And he might be a wealth of knowledge for this. The High Line itself, the structure is doing what Dan has been doing, what Dan is talking about for Little Island in terms of programming. And they were really successful at the High Line in bringing younger people from the neighborhood into the High Line, programming for them, letting them program. So that's something you might want to look into.
That's fantastic. Programming that comes from within the community, right?
Yes.
Serves the community. I think that's awesome. Can I ask, is there a plaque or some sort of commemoration to this abolitionist in your building?
No. The most people don't even know this church that was on this property actually still exists. If you walk into Uniqlo and go to the rear, there's a stone wall that's been preserved that is the remnant of this massive church that used to be on this site. It's not even mentioned in the landmarks designation for this. But there is, if you Google, the history is there and it's written. So, and there was quite a bit of it. Of course, we had the Astor Place riots, which was one of the biggest cultural historic events in this community board. There's a lot that happened here in regard to abolitionists, the race situation leading up to the Civil War, during the Civil War.
And before the Civil War.
And absolutely before the Civil War. And then, God knows, probably all the way beyond. So, but that is unnoted right now in the Soho Cast Iron Historic District, as far as I know.
Yes. Patricia,
sorry, go ahead.
Patricia and I recently went on a walking tour and were shocked to to learn that there was quite a bit of Black land ownership here in New York City, and free Blacks. And we're talking the 1600s. We're talking, you know, but as we said, it's a history that has gone unnoted because, you know, we are taught to believe that Black people were brought here as chattel slaves much later. And in fact, you know, huge parts of what is now Chinatown was Black owned, you know, sold to freed Black people by the Dutch. So there's tons of history we don't have yet, but that group that does that tour, we're hoping to bring them to you guys, to this working group to present and really teach us a lot more about our history. It's fascinating. All right. Well, so does anyone have any other suggestions or ideas or opportunities for equity within the committees that we discussed this evening?
I just wanted to jump in more and say, you know, one of the important things is making sure full conversations happen on all applications, because we often get applications in front of us that we run through really quickly because whatever reason, and we don't properly and fully explore the full dynamic of the application. And I think that that's one of the things that for each of the committees, ensuring that we ask questions, even if we think the answers are obvious, so that there's an opportunity to hear if there is a different answer or a surprise, that makes sure that the conversations happen. And having chaired a couple of different committees at this point, it happens. And, you know, people are just in a rush. You've got a bunch of applications in front of you and you just move through them really quickly. Or if you're at a part, people get interested in one aspect of it and they miss a section. So it's just important to review the full applications, I think, you know, for each committee, and sort of making sure that you are looking at something to make sure all areas are covered. Another aspect is there are lots of changes we just can make. You know, they don't require conversations, it just requires people bringing it up. And that's why it's really important when people have ideas to bring it up with the committee chairs. It's not hard to implement change. We all are supportive of many of these changes. That's on the smaller side. I think, you know, there are obviously larger issues as well, but we can, you know, as I told both you and Patricia, we've already started the change. You know, the conversations has already changed on the board, and that's what we need to keep doing, so that we keep doing or keep looking at things with equity in mind, and it's all aspects. And it's something, you know, I think just the equity in who are you hiring. It's not a requirement. It's not necessarily something that we can weigh application against because it may not be within the mandate, but it's a question we can ask and we can listen to the answers. And that's important to do and to not forget to do, I think. And it's up to all of us, at this point, all 49 of us, to do that on all the different committees that we sit on, or even if you don't sit on a committee, you know, in the Zoom world, we're all able to participate. So it's really up to all of us to ask those questions and think of the ways that we can all make a difference.
I also wanted to acknowledge Amy Brenner for putting together this spreadsheet for us for all the committees. And I believe you said you had a question tonight.
Yes, thank you. That's the first time I've ever called in. Used the phone, so I can't figure out how to raise my hand. I'm sorry. I usually do it on my laptop. I'm sorry that I joined late. I didn't mean that as a disrespectful thing. I just had a family commitment, and so I apologize. So I may be repeating something that was said earlier, so please let me know. I came in when Matt was talking, and I think he alluded to, should we be doing some advocacy actually on this, in this working group or in some of the committees. And I wondered if anyone had brought up, I had just heard that there's a bill that I believe they're trying to get through the city and the state, where for all government contracts, the entity that got the contract would be required to have 30% of their workforce live in NYCHA or and otherwise come from communities that often are not hired into these companies. And I can do some more research on it. I don't know if you've talked about advocacy, and I'm not sure that this is something the group should do. It's just a question I'm asking. And if it is something we're interested in, maybe we could look into that. And potentially, if the committee wants to do this, I'm not saying we should, I'm just bringing up the idea. We could write a resolution if we, examine it and feel strongly on it in support of this, because it's not specific to CB2, but it might, be addressing some of the things we're talking about. And it would impact people who came in front of, who might come in front of us at some point. Just raising that question.
Yeah, that would be great. I thought that's a wonderful initiative, and I would love to learn more about it. And I think something we could discuss is if it's something we wanted to support. That would be great. Tricia?
I'll do a little research and get back to you.
Thank you. You
do
so much.
Sorry. The other thing is, because we have 10 committees, we're going to do a part 2 of this for next month. And we also wanted to discuss district needs, because our next meeting is after full board in October, and budget priorities that you possibly, our working group could think of with regard to informing CB2. So I'm asking this of our working group. One idea that we were, that Mara and I were discussing, but it overlaps with schools and ed, and I'm sure Janine is in agreement with this, is the fact that we need more teacher diversification going forth in our schools in CB2 as one area. Our working group, anybody, anything? Akila?
I was just gonna I just raised my hand, but I'll lower it now. Yes, I mean, that is a huge concern for CB2. All the schools in our community board, and our community board overlaps with the educational district too as well, really do not have diversity in the hiring of either teachers, administrators, all sort of professional degree positions. And it's shocking as a parent of color walking into these spaces and my children not seeing anyone that looks like them in a leadership position in their school. And for other children, for all children, not to see that all different kinds of people can occupy that space and can be a teacher, be a leader, be, all of those things. It really is a deficit in our community, one that I would love to, work on to improve. And I would love for this working group to take on on the discussion about it and to see, what kind of ideas we can generate to propose to assist in that area.
Okay.
Well, I mean, that's similar to what Amy was talking about. I mean, how could we have it be a rule that, representation within our school buildings there should be a variety of representation within our school buildings, just as they should hire when doing construction jobs, populations that are traditionally left out or just not thought of. But that's also something we've all worked on in our schools and ed teacher workforce development.
There's a lot of really good, and I can bring some of this to the group. There's a lot of really good, I'm a psychologist, so I'm thinking about it from this lens right now. There's a lot of studies and information on hiring practices, and one of the main causes of having such homogeneous groups working in in companies or in schools or within an organization is oftentimes due to the sort of people tend to hire people that look like them. And that has been, you know, documented in so much research. And you actually have to, there's this whole process you have to go through in order to realize that that's what you're doing. Because in many cases, the people doing the hiring don't actually realize that they're doing that. But they repeat it over and over and over again. And that's how you get organizations or, you know, companies or any group that become so homogeneous. And it informs what we're talking about in terms of hiring. I mean, I'd be happy to share that research and that information if others are interested in learning more about it, because you really have to break down your own assumptions about others in order to begin to practice different hiring practices, in order to actually begin to put them into practice. And it requires a different lens. You have to learn how to do it. I don't know if that's interesting or applicable.
I think it is. I mean, and I also, you know, I wonder how that unconscious bias plays into the community board, into the people that serve on the community board, people who receive, you know, positions to chair committees on the community board. And what are we doing to people bring in people that look like them traditionally. So that's something else we should look at. And I'm very interested in that research if you are willing to share.
Sandy? Unmute yourself, Sandy.
Okay. Listening to you talk about the local schools, I live right around the corner from the new middle school at 75 Morton.
Mm-hmm.
And on 2 occasions, I've seen a policeman escorting a student out of the school. In both situations, the student was Black and the police officer was white. And I don't know what precipitated the action, but I just found it very disheartening that was going on in this school. This is a middle school. In one case, I was later told that the kid had some kind of outburst or breakdown, you know, emotional moment, but it just seemed really, I don't think police should be in schools, and I don't think they should be arresting people. And I'm sure a school like 75 Morton must have like a social work staff, or, you know, that could intercede and do a better job than just rounding up a kid and putting handcuffs on him.
Yeah, we've heard about those situations. I personally tried to find out specifics, but was unable to. And I don't even know what to say about that. It's horrible.
Maybe a meeting with the principal or, you know, other school staff, just to find out what their position is, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, there are 2 principals in that building because there are 2 schools. There's the D75 school and 75 Morton. Having, you know, it is so much more likely when a child of color has an emotional breakdown or has, you know, trouble emotionally in school, which so many children have, but it is so much more likely to then experience exposure to the police and police intervention rather than using the resources that schools have, like you're saying, social workers and just finding someone who can reach that child, right? It could be, you know, it could be a lunch lady the child likes, or it could be, you know, anybody who knows that child enough to reach them in those moments when they're really struggling. And it is so hard. It's so hard to see those things, and it's heartbreaking for that child. I mean, for that child to have to go through that in such a time. I mean, thank you for bringing that up, Sandy.
The other thing that I was thinking with regard to district needs, we, in our inaugural meeting, we talked about anti-bias training. Carter, I think there is I don't know if the borough president is going to institute it among all community board members, but we should probably have it in our, I don't know, in our bylaws or somewhere that future board members have this, even when we're not here, that they have this going forward in the future.
Yeah, it was a long fight to get this. We've actually been working on it for a year and a half, I think, in asking the borough president for this training. And, you know, I've really been pushing, particularly in the last few months, to just really get this done. And a big reason is because the diversity of the community boards, if you look at the makeup across all the community boards, many of the members wouldn't be in a position to receive this training from their employers. And that's because of the age makeup. A lot of people are retired. A lot of people are self-employed that are on the board. And so I think the thinking and the reliance was, oh, of course, everybody's had an opportunity to have more contemporary training on this, you know, within some of the newer methods, but that was clearly not the case. And I really felt that was a little, you know, outdated in sort of way of thinking. And I know prior to me, Terry Coode had worked on this for a year and a half with the borough president's office also to get this training. So this was really a big step forward in the modules that they're offering. I don't have all the details yet on what the specifics of the training will be, and I still think that they're working through that. But it's something, you know, definitely that we should consider having as a requirement, and discuss with the borough president's office, perhaps having them have that as a required training, particularly along with the conflict of interest training. And, you know, with the advancements that we've all had in meeting virtually, offering those trainings is significantly easier. So the burden of requiring that training has dropped significantly because you can do it from home. And I can't, just as a board chair, I can't emphasize how important that is, because even having conversations with people when you aren't using the same language is complicated. And when we've all received similar training, it's really a good first step to having complicated conversations and people understanding circumstances or examples that have been provided. You know, so that's really a big step. And so it's something that we're still getting the details, but we heard the borough president had committed to it both at this month's borough board and she acknowledged it at our full board. So it's
okay.
Big win, I think.
Great.
But Patricia, were you talking about having it something just for our community board, for community board 2, kind of built in for, you know, forever?
Yes, yes.
Or as long as necessary?
Yes, definitely. Long after we're not here.
I mean, would that be something we could put into our district needs statement?
So just to clarify with me, you mean for the board, for the community, for both?
The board.
For the board, yeah. I you know, as I've shared with a lot of people, I would like to see those requirements come from the borough president's office, who has that mandate over us, you know, so to speak, on trainings, so that it's an institutional change. You know, a lot of the discussions that we've had, I've really, you know, challenged people of how do we change the institution to require these so that they're perpetual, you know, and go forward. And so we can do it ourselves, but I think if we really should be having the borough president's office do this as a requirement, so that it's required for all board members across Manhattan, and you know, that all community board members in Manhattan can have the same conversations with each other and share whatever the issues are, even across boards. It's good to have, you know, conversations like that, particularly throughout Manhattan. We've had a history where we've been paired with other boards. You know, earlier on in my tenure, we were matched with another board, and people went back and forth between meetings. And you know, those are really good steps, and maybe that's even something, you know, that we might advocate for to do again, and help us understand the needs in other communities, you know, even within Manhattan.
Okay. Matt? Thank you, Carter.
I was just going to say, I think Carter's right on the we should try to have it be Manhattan Borough President. But if it's not Manhattan Borough President, let's have it in our bylaws, just in case. You know, so I think you can have a mechanism, certainly, that every member has to, you know, have whatever we want to call it, training every year. And we greatly encourage the borough president to fulfill its, you know, yada, yada, yada in the language. But, you know, I like the idea of requiring some things before people, I mean, I have to think about it, because it gets a little, what are you going to do if they don't do it? You know, are you going to say you can't vote on, you know, what's the mechanism for enforcing it? But I like the idea. Pushes people. But Cardi, with you on present.
Thank you. Are there any questions or other suggestions or comments from our working group members regarding what they would like to see, possibly budget priorities? I mean, we're gonna continue this conversation offline after this, because our next meeting is not till after our full board in October. The next meeting is October 27th, a Tuesday at 6:30. I just want to make sure I have that correct. Yes, Tuesday at 6:30. But we'll be talking offline. Anthony, you're quiet. Do you have anything to comment, or not to pick on you, Anthony?
Not this particular evening, no.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mar, anybody else?
No. I mean, I think it was a good introduction, and I know I definitely see some things we can do differently when we present the rest of the communities. Committees. And yeah, that's all.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you guys. Thank you all so much. All right, good night.
Good night.
Thank you.